In the history of the Eurasian Steppe, the spacious land in the lower Volga, Don, and the Dnieper area represents a scene in which the people coming from the depths of Asia constantly replace one another. Since the beginning of time, the crowds of nomadic people have passed through the wide gateways between the Ural Mountains and the Caspian Sea, and took their turn in occupying and dominating this region. It seems as if the historical destiny of the northern Black Sea region was to delay these innumerable hordes from entering further westward into Europe. This region had been dominated by the Scythians since the 7th century BC. But after several setbacks that the Scythians suffered at the end of the 4th century BC, they were on the brink of collapse. And by this time, another group of nomadic people had already made its way here, who were to dominate this region for many centuries to come. They are known by the name the Sarmatians. They spoke an Iranian language similar to that of the Scythians. But unlike the Scythians, they were not a unified people, but more of a confederation of various groups of similar stocks, rather than individual ethnic tribes. By their nature, they were highly mobile. They mingled freely with their neighboring tribes, formed alliances, coalesced, and then broke up again. Most of the Sarmatians were nomadic people, whose grazing herds provided much of the food and clothing that they required. They wintered on the southern fringes of the Russian steppe, close to the Black and the Caspian Sea, and then headed north for the pasture in the spring. Accompanying with them were their covered wagons, which served them as their home. They inhabited the northern Black Sea region, and historians and archaeologists usually describe their region as the coast of the Black Sea and the Sea of Azov, from the mouth of the Danube in the west to Galanzic Bay in the east. And their region reached as far as the Vistula River in the middle of the 1st century BC. According to Roman tradition, their region was called the Sarmatia, which also included the North Caucasus and the lower Volga regions as well. Despite their dominance in the region, they remained a shadowy people, and far fewer images survived of them in the art than of their Scythian cousins. Like the Scythians, the Sarmatians were of a white or Caucasoid appearance, and before the arrival of the Huns, it is thought that few had Asiatic or Turco-Mongol features. And yet they were sufficiently alien to the Romans that Tacitus, writing in AD 98, called them repulsive in appearance. Although we should not take his description literally, because the barbarians rarely ever matched the Mediterranean beauty standards. Sarmatians, like the Scythians, wore long hair and long beards, except for the Alans, who often had short hairs or ponytails, and their faces clean-shaven except for the mustaches. Another Alan fashion that made them different was their cranial deformation. The Alans usually had elongated skulls, which was probably obtained by bandaging the head in their infancy. Sarmatian noblemen often reached a height of 170 to 180 centimeters, as measured from the skeletons, and their bones were usually sturdy, which is evidence of their nomadic milk and meat diets. Pliny the Elder, writing in the 1st century AD, mentions that both Sarmatian men and women had tattoos inscribed on their bodies, and even their children were tattooed in their infancy. And their designs were mostly of an animal style, similar to those on the ice-preserved human skin from the Pazyryk tombs in the Altai Mountains. Their costume was overall similar to that of better documented Scythians people. Each of the Sarmatian people had their own king, who led the armed forces of his nation. Although there had been instances of disturbances, when the Sarmatians had a number of tribal chiefs or sub-kings ruling the people. According to the classical writers, the Sarmatians' armies ranged in size from thousands to hundreds of thousands, but this figure is unlikely to be true. Nomad culture throughout history has always exaggerated their strength in order to instill fear. Archaeological finds suggest that such a number could only have been possible when all the men capable of bearing arms would come out. According to most of the Roman writers, the Sarmatians were a disorderly rabble, out only for the plunder, which was more suited for predatory incursions than for regular warfare. Strabo, however, states that the Roxolani tribe were warriors, rather than brigands, but often provoked war as a way of exacting tributes. It was also a common fact that the Sarmatians had a thirst for plunder, and they even enroll with foreign powers as mercenaries. Sarmatian contingents are often mentioned in the employ of the Bosporan and the Pontic kingdoms. The archaeological sources show that for most of the Sarmatians' history, the greater part of the Sarmatians' forces were horse archers. And the Romans' view of Sarmatians as undisciplined raiders continued till the 4th century AD. But the fact is that by this time, they were militarily organized, after the introduction of armored lancers. The long lance required specialized skill in both the men and the horses, and so this led to a degree of professionalization. Although the Sarmatians were known for their barbaric and nomadic lifestyle, but it was not that they never made any contact with any other civilized societies, except for the loot and plunder and for military purposes. But there were many Greek centers on the coast of the Black Sea, which had been the places where two different cultures mingled with each other for mutual benefits. These centers for centuries had been producing goods for the Scythian market. And after the arrival of the Sarmatians, two places in particular, the Bosporan capital Panticapaeum and Tanais at the mouth of Don, became very popular. This was the place where nomadic goods and slaves were bartered for luxurious Greek articles. And it so happened that Orsi, and then later the Alans, controlled the main camel routes from the Black Sea to Mesopotamia and India, making them rich as a consequence. And according to Strabo, they began to wear gold in their dresses. These oriental objects then turn up in the graves of richer individuals, making them distinguishable from the remains of other Sarmatian people. As per our sources of information, we have both literary and epigraphic sources, but these sources are only from the Greeks' point of view, which are fragmentary and often based on stereotypes, and are one-sided. And this is where archaeology comes in, to provide more complete and objective information. But the interpretation of archaeological material involves many problems as well. Distinguishing the Sarmatian monuments from the monuments of other barbarians is a big challenge. And any monuments that are associated with the Sarmatians will always remain questionable. One of the reasons for this is the fact that the ancient authors did not use the term Sarmatians exclusively for the Sarmatians people. It also had other meanings, and often more than one at a time. And on top of this, the information provided by the archaeological sources depends to a great extent on the particular explanatory models used to explain it. Despite all these challenges, archaeology still stands as a reliable source of information for the Sarmatians. Most of the scholars consider the steppes of the lower Volga region as the motherland of the Sarmatians, and so the archaeological materials recovered here are used as a standard to compare the finds from other regions. The main archaeological monuments in this region are the kurgan burials. These types of burial kurgans, dating from the end of the 3rd century BC onwards, are found all over the steppes of the North Black Sea area and in the North Caucasus. And not only here, but also in the forest steppe to the north of the Black Sea, dating to the 2nd and 4th centuries AD, which testify the fact that they settled in the far north as well. Sarmatian sites of the 1st century AD, in the Hungary and also in Romania, confirm the reports of the ancient writers that the Iajigus and Roxolani penetrated areas far beyond the North Black Sea. The conquest of the Scythians by the Sarmatians is also reflected in the archaeology. Their advancement was marked by the total disappearance of Scythian graves, and the gradual spread of new burial forms, which were similar but not identical to those of the Scythians. The Sarmatians came to the Scythians region in 2 successive waves. The material expression of the first wave is seen in the phallery from the horse harness, which is ascribed to a new Iranian culture, alien to that of the Scythians. New culture also brought polychromy in various forms, and the decoration of jewelry with colored stones or glass inlays. The second invasion was reflected in the change in the material culture, namely in the appearance of the Sarmatians' animal style. By comparison of the materials found in the kurgans, the archaeologists have singled out 3 consecutive stages in the history of the Sarmatian culture. The early stage, which has been called Prokhorovka culture, dates from the end of the 4th to 2nd century BC. The middle stage or Susli culture, dating from the 1st century BC and 1st century AD. And the last stage, dating from the 2nd to the 4th centuries AD. Each of these stages had its own style of burial buildings, burial customs, and contents of burials. As time passed, the weapons, horse equipment, ornaments, and potteries were changed over time. There were also local differences that emerged, owing to the influence of local ancient culture, and the influence of the people they had been in contact with. The name Sarmatians is taken from Sauromatai, a name given to the people who were eastern neighbors of the Scythians, also called the Sarmatians. They occupied a land beyond the Don River, to the northeast of the mouth of Don. But there is no direct line of development that can be drawn from Sauromatai to the Sarmatians of the 3rd century BC. Because the nucleus of the Sarmatian people was formed in the foothills of the southern Ural Mountains. In the 4th to the 3rd centuries BC, part of the population of the southern Ural moved into the lower Volga regions, and conquered the Sauromatai living here. The surviving Sarmatians joined the conquerors, and were able to preserve a separate position for a long time as reported in some sources, but they were eventually absorbed. The name of the Sarmatians, but in a slightly modified form, the Sarmatians, was then transferred into the designation of all the tribes who inhabited this region. Because of the scarcity of information, we do not have a detailed account of the struggle between the Sarmatians and the newcomers from the east. But it is clear that the latter were victorious, and that the surviving Sarmatians joined the victors. And as a result, new Sarmatian polities known to the ancient world as the Orsi, the Roxolani, the Alans, and the Iajigas were formed. These powerful military unions of the tribes then began their great advance westward across the Don, and into the steppes north of the Black Sea, where lay the Scythians, who after several defeats were completely exhausted, and now left at the mercy of the Sarmatians. We will explore the events that happen next in the upcoming videos. I hope you have enjoyed the video. If you do so, then please like this video, and subscribe to this channel for more content like this. And thanks for watching.